Anyway, I thought I'd make another video about Joe Rogan. Maybe someday Joe will actually see one of them. You know, everybody knows certain things about what rabbit hole they decided to go down. And Joe has went down the drug rabbit hole. But just because you went down through that rabbit hole doesn't mean you know anything about God and religion. And Jesus, Jesus even calls himself what? What? The door. And you only go through that door one way. You go through that door by believing his word, and his word says to be born again. Now when you get born again, you get a sensor that gives you the ability to sense the spiritual world. Like, I got tricked into getting born again. I was about 14 years old. Didn't know nothing about nothing. Got tricked into getting born again. But it was God ordained. Got tricked into saying this prayer. This guy gave us this test at this basketball game. Excuse me, this is real life. I got something caught in my teeth here, and I'm gonna get it out. But I went to this basketball game, and practice. I wanted to play some basketball, you know. Thought it'd be fun. With a friend. This minister corners us in the back room and tricks me into getting born again. He gets us to take this test, asking if we'd go to heaven or hell, and I said I'd go to hell. So then this guy, I don't even know this minister's name. He might even be dead by now. Who knows? He'd probably be almost 62. He'd probably be close to 80 by now. Boy, that's a shame I don't even know the guy's name. It's a shame he never knew what happened after we had this experience. Oh boy, that's a shame. It would sure make his faith grow if he knew what happened. But he tricked me, and he said that you can't get to God through other than this guy named Jesus. And I didn't know who Jesus was. All I know is I took this test, said I wouldn't go to heaven. And so he had me do showed me this little paper that said you can't get to God other than through this guy named Jesus, and had me do this prayer. And I wasn't very happy. I was embarrassed by the prayer. I was honest in the fact that I felt like I wouldn't go to heaven, but I did the prayer. Got the hell out of there. Don't think I ever went back to that basketball thing or ever saw that minister ever again. But God honored that, even though I didn't know who Jesus was. But that's how you do get to God, because I tell you what, I forget if it was months or weeks, but God showed up. I mean, God showed up. And I'd like to get back to that place that I found then. That's my goal in the Christian life, is to get back there, because that was amazing. But God showed up, and it was wonderful when he was around, because everything was blessed. Everything was, it was like the Bible talks about the Ark of the Covenant, how that wherever it was, it blessed. Well, this was the Father. This was God. This was a Father. See, there's different revelations of God. There's God the Holy Spirit. There's God the Son and God the Father, and they're all God. But this spirit was a revelation of the Father God, the Holy God, the holy presence of God. That, for example, when Mary got her experience with Jesus, she was just only 14. We're more pure at that age. But as we go through life, we pick up, almost like a boat in the ocean, all these barnacles and garbage and belief systems and just nastiness of the heart, because we've been burned by people, and then we get bitter, and it depends on your state of mind. Like some people could become like Doctor. If you look at the Silence of the Lambs, you see different mentalities. Like Hannibal Lecter became a sociopath because he really saw humanity for as nasty as it is, and Jesus even saw that. Jesus said, "Why call me good? There's none that's good other than Jesus. Jesus was good." So Hannibal Lecter, I can understand a personality like that, because there's two types of people in this world. There's sensitive people like me. They're not very aware. They're always bombarded by what they see in people. I mean, the nastiness I see in people is just unreal. It's almost like that guy in the movie The Green Mile, the innocent-minded guy that could perform these miracles and stuff. He was a child at heart. And that's kind of the world I lived in, very sensitive to spiritual things and people, and always filled with their ugliness, and even transforming me, like the boy in the bubble that has no immune system. Mentally, that's how I was, and I didn't understand why I was that way. I do now, and I'm writing books about it. But it's a state of consciousness where you have one person that's like me, and then you have another state of consciousness, a person like a Hannibal Lecter that is totally aware type personality. And I can see a person like that viewing humanity as viewing himself as being superior, and viewing humanity as for what it really is, pathetic. I mean, I can see that, just how pathetic we really all are. I mean, you just look. I mean, just look at the president of the country, to the Republicans and the Democrats, and all the nastiness. Like when Trump said that Hillary Clinton was nasty, he nailed it. She is nasty, and we're all nasty. Jesus said, "Let the dead bury the dead." We're all spiritually in darkness. We're all in a very nasty state of mind, and but you see, God came to me when I was 14. You see God coming to Mary when she was 14, and the Catholics, which he talks about in this thing, thought that there was some special holiness to Mary. The only holiness was to Mary, and the fact that she was only probably around 14, and pure of heart. And the only holiness to Mary was the fact she got the resurrected seed from Sarah, because God, Sarah being too old, resurrected that seed, and then God being sneaky as far as hiding all his mysteries, which there's so many mysteries in the Bible. I can take just one little scripture and write an entire book about it. It's so hidden, so powerful. And God spoke to me in an audible voice twice, in the depth of. It took me 40 years to realize that he knew everything about me by the things he said to me. It took me 40 years of developing a understanding to a level that realized when he spoke the two things he spoke to me in my life, that he had a total understanding of me that no one in the world did. No psychiatrist, nobody like that could even touch his understanding and speak like he speaks. because he has complete understanding. So he spoke to me in audible voice a couple times, audibly. It took me 40 years to realize just how deep his understanding is. So, and the Bible's very hidden. It's almost hidden in a way so that people can read it and not understand it, but get little bits of it to pique their curiosity and then dig a little bit, and then God opens up more revelation. And he always opens up revelation by an actual event. Like after I did that prayer, all of a sudden God showed up, and boy, I tell you, it was the most amazing spirit of blessing and joy. And it describes that in the Bible. It says the Holy Spirit is like peace and joy. But what it mentions in the Old Testament is the blessing of the Ark of the Covenant, where that just blessed the nation where God was, and it makes perfect sense because it's part of the kingdom. God, like I have revelation of, it's so simple once you understand these stuff. Like in heaven, there's no time. So of course, when God came down and was doing the creative stuff on the earth, we're confused on the time thing. But you got to understand, you have a dimension of no time of God coming down and interacting with the creation of the space and time. And of course, wherever he is, he's going to dominate. And so in Genesis, when it says a day, it's a day with God, which is totally different. And even in this thing, it talks about them taking drugs. And Ari spent 3 months having a family and friends, which was only a 10-minute trip. So that's how space and time is so different when you do leave this dimension. But they're talking about a drug dimension, which I'm not familiar with that dimension at all. Obviously, it frees the mind to be able to start seeing into infinity, because our mind, we focus on one thing at a time, right? Now, when you're young, you can download all that information at once. Like when you're young, there's no way you could learn how to speak if they had to teach it to you. It's just a download. Your personality, your language. By the time you're 3 or 4 years old, there's already an extreme volume of download of information that gives you a personality and language that you don't have to be taught. There's a huge download of an absorption of information that all of a sudden this personality just emerges and starts speaking. And that's and they're not taught any of that stuff. It's just stuff they pick up naturally. Then when we become an adult, we change into more of which is kind of good, where we choose what we read, we choose what we believe, we choose what we hear, we choose what we listen to. And that's what Joe Rogan's entire problem is, that he doesn't want to take the blue pill and enter the matrix of Christianity. He doesn't want to believe it. But when in Genesis, when God came down, of course there's no time in that dimension. So when it says a day, even the Bible even kind of gives a clue of it. It says a day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. But it's even more than that. Because wherever God is, there's no time. So he's got all the time in the world to just sit there and listen to anybody's prayer. There is no time. Do you understand that he can watch someone's entire lifetime? He can do all this because he's not subject with time. Time is is a constraint. Time is a limited resource. Time is the birth of where you create things. For example, Da Vinci was intelligent. He even invented something that was you could make flight. That could have been one of the first airplanes. He could have been credited with creating flight if he would have had a little bit more time, because he had the foundational principles of building the first airplane. Now, he never got a chance to really perfect it, but but he was well above his years, but he didn't have the thing called time. Now, with God, that's not a problem. So in Genesis, the time thing, it can look like to us, it can look like a large amount of time when actually it isn't. So when he created everything in Genesis, you notice that everything the Genesis says were created in a certain order is how the evolutionary order follows. Like man appeared toward the end of the 6th day, and you see man appearing on the earth at exactly what the Bible says. But what it doesn't show is the secret of the time thing. And I had a revelation of time 40 years ago where God slowed down time. And I don't take drugs like Joe Rogan. So he doesn't know what's real and what's not real, taking drugs. If you don't take drugs, you know what's real and what's not real. And I'm not the only person who's had these experiences. There's a site called Sid Roth where, miracles are very common. It's commonplace among people that get close to God. And it's only the people that draw near to God to a certain degree. It's normal. Because you break into the heavenly realm rules of how things operate. And that's why Jesus, when Jesus died, the veil was opened up. The disconnect. I truly believe that when Adam and Eve sinned, they joined. One creation was procreating. The other creation of Adam and Eve is, because he says, let man, he didn't call them Adam and Eve, or did he? But I just believe he made it two creations. One were keeping the earth, and the other were keeping the garden. Now, it doesn't say that the other were keeping it. It doesn't get specific, but that God always hides stuff. He always hides stuff. I've just cracked so many secrets, and he's always hiding stuff. Always. He even said that straight up to the disciples, that he didn't really start opening up revelation to them until John chapter 14 in the Bible. He starts speaking plainly to them he even hid it from them. And he does that if once you learn why he hides everything, is so he don't have to judge you. For example, the angels got judged. They didn't get no forgiveness of sins, and that's why he does this stuff. It's by design. He hides this stuff, and all of it makes perfect sense once you understand it all. Like when they came out of Egypt, he said he's going to blot these out of the book of life that sinned. And I thought, well, why? I thought they always got forgiveness of sins. Then I realized that he had openly shown himself to them so much that he had to start judging them a little bit like an angel. Like in our legal system, you have a child that if that child murders someone, is not judged heavy. But if a teenager murders someone and they're closer to an adult, well, then they get judged more like an adult. And unfortunately that's what happened to the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt, and they continued to sin. And I'm glad that I've had some revelation, most of it when I was younger. But as an adult, I haven't had too much revelation. Now, if God trusts you, he'll give you more revelation. I mean, it's even in the Bible very clear. Like Abraham straight up saw angels, whereas Jacob, who was name changed to Israel, was like the typical human being that wrestled with the angel and didn't really trust the angel or believe. And the angel, actually, I believe, was Jesus. same one that appeared to Abraham. There was two angels that went on to Sodom and Gomorrah. And notice how they revealed what was going to happen in future events, which is prophecy, which the Bible talks about, and many Christians do, and prophesied and have dreams and talk about things. Very similar to in Genesis, or Joseph in the Bible had dreams. I mean, it's very, very similar. Even Jacob, as soon as he got the birthright, had dreams and saw angels ascending and descending, but he didn't reach the point where he actually saw something with his own eyes until he met the angel. And of course, God always shows up in our time of need, and that was his time of need. He thought he saw his brother was going to kill him. He might have killed him if he didn't have that intervention, but God showed up, you know, because that's what he does when we need him. He's waiting all the time. Finally, when we open the door, it says Jesus stands at the door and knocks. So when he opened the door, of course, there he is. There's Jesus. He wrestles with him. I believe it was Jesus. And, of course, the Bible kind of hides that. But he really doesn't trust him. So then you see him suffer, not knowing that his son was not killed. Now, Abraham knew his son wasn't killed. Then look at Jacob. He thought his son was killed. And he suffered all those years needlessly. But if he would have looked at the dream, but pride blocked his vision, his ability to see. And that's the thing. The evil always blocks our ability to see. So I'm listening to Joe Rogan talk here on this thing, the link between religion, or they think they've cracked the link between religion and psychedelics. So guess who they're using? They're using the Catholics, who drifted so far away from God they couldn't even raise a mouse from the dead. So of course the Catholics are using salvia to try to have some sort of religious experience. Of course they are, because they drifted so far away from God, in their own imaginations, and their own religion pulled them so far away from God. I mean, they got so far away from God. I mean, it's just an absolute joke. And there are some Catholics out there that find the truth, but and I'm not judging the entire Catholic. I'm just saying, for the most part, it's a religion that's dead as a doornail. And Jesus talks about the churches, you know, how messed up they are in Revelations. And you know, you are what you are. So here you have some religious people trying to have some sort of experience, and they're using this, and of course they are. They're going back to what man would do all the time to have a religious experience, from sweat caverns to drugs. That's how they're trying to have a spiritual experience, because we're all trying to have a spiritual experience. Now, most people don't have a really good experience until they have a near-death experience, and then the veil is broken. And let me explain what the veil is. The veil is darkness. As you age past 14, or you can have darkness when you're younger. And even Joe Rogan's success is him overcoming darkness. Like, he was an introvert. He was introverted. Couldn't even go to a bank without being in fear. And finally he broke out of that fear, and then once he broke out of that, then he kind of broke the veil on just the mental realm, which is very close to the spiritual. And that's when he started being more successful in life. Me, I didn't even know I was mentally dominated until about 10 years ago, when God finally opened my eyes. I mean, really started opening my eyes. And I still haven't totally broken out of it as far as what dominates us on a mental realm. But it's very interesting on a spiritual realm. Very interesting stuff. I mean, even on the psychological realm, it's very interesting. Like, for example, even when you are in extreme focus, like, well, I'm the opposite of that. When you have an extreme focused encounter, it's almost like time slows down, right? Like if you're about ready to wreck, or when I was a kid, about fell off my bicycle, it seemed like you're falling for 30 seconds, before you hit the ground finally. Because you're totally aware. You have total awareness. And that's kind of what got Joe Rogan. If you can move awareness into a constant, then you can start overcoming darkness. And that's why Joe Rogan makes $50,000 an episode. And I haven't even begun to even come out of my darkness. I mean, not really. To some degree. And I don't want to get too heavy on that type of stuff, because it's very interesting stuff, and I'm writing some books about that kind of stuff. But it's very interesting stuff about the mental realm, because we all live in our own matrix by our thought processes. And everything that you encounter in life triggers different thought processes. Like, I was just at work, and some black guy accused me of treating him like I was the master and he was the slave, and I was treating him like a slave. And he says to some black guy, he's like, well, I thought the plantation days were over. But the truth is, after that guy in his mental matrix realm of thinking left me, I went over to this other black guy that he was talking to, and I decided to talk to him next. And I said, I think he's confused. I'm the slave in this situation. I'm the one that's only working for $12 an hour. I'm the one that's running around like a chicken, like with his head cut off. He was sitting there like a king while I'm waiting on him, and unfortunately I had to tell him what to do because he didn't know what to do unless I told him what to do. And I'm running around with very limited time to tell each person exactly what to do. And because I had to be kind of firm, because my time was so limited, they give me zero time to do my job. And I can get behind in my job in microseconds. Because I was a little stern with him, telling him what to do, I was all of a sudden the master, and he was being the more poor persecuted slave. But no, that wasn't the situation. I was the slave. He was in the master type position where he was making way more money than me, having it way more better than me, but that was his perception of the matrix that he lives in as a black man that's immature. That can't see through his pain, and then is falsely accusing me not having any real understanding of my situation. Only seeing through he's basically seeing through his feelings, how I made him feel. Well, you know something? Reality is based more on how you feel. Your feelings are based on. That's not reality. That's a triggered emotional amygdala type thinking in that's primal and has nothing to do with your brain. That's an impulsive, reactive, triggered type emotional feeling triggering a pain in your past where you grew up thinking a certain way and felt, there's plenty of black men out there that didn't grow up that way, like Tiger Woods, who didn't think like that. His parents didn't make him think like that. His parents made him feel like he was a person, which had to do with his parents imputing those belief systems on him. So he grew up thinking about himself totally different. And you didn't, because you were hanging around with the people that all thought the same way, and that's called a mind virus. They made you sick. So don't sit there and tell me that I'm not the slave in that scenario. When you're looking at things through your warped perception of the matrix in which they contaminated your mind, and you can't see it because you were around it all your life and you thought that way and you thought that was reality. But Tiger Woods and Barack Obama are the same color as you. So maybe you need to get away from people like that and start thinking like them, because it's a matter of thinking. I just had to get out. I get tired of people, dealing with people that mentality, and that's really the whole problem with this whole era we have in right now. Everybody's seeing how they're triggered on how they feel based on what triggers them from some pain in your past, whether it's and the people play on that. The Democrats play on your emotions and use those as puppet strings to make you control you for their own agenda of getting power and making you to vote for them, and you foolishly vote for them, not seeing the truth. It's such a anyway. I didn't want to get too deep on all that. It happened by accident. But the Catholics are the last people you want to that are so spiritually dead. Remember Jesus said, "Let the dead bury the dead." Well, the Catholics are dead, a lot of them, dead as a doornail spiritually. So the Catholics of course they're using these drugs in this, and then Joe Rogan thinks, I cracked the secret between religion. Oh yeah, you did, between religion maybe, but not the truth of God. And the truth of God, there's millions of people that have supernatural experiences out there. I'm just one, and there's millions of us. Sid Roth has been doing interviews. Have Sid Roth on your show, Joe, and try to tear him apart and say you got to have proof. You just can't take. You might be able to find a person in here that's lying, that's been on Sid's show. That doesn't prove anything. You might find one, maybe two. Who knows? To deceive people, it's always possible. But and the volume speaks the truth. The volume of people, and I see these things. I've had my own experiences. I know what's true and what's not true. I worked in the medical field for 20 years. I dealt with life and death situations. I was a respiratory therapist. I'm not a stupid person. I got almost a 4.0 grade point average, even though I had severe attention deficit disorder. I still, through perseverance, ended up with almost a 4.0 in one of the toughest respiratory therapy schools in the country, I believe, and graduated from it. So I'm not stupid. Now I do have a learning impairment as far as, which I've, if I had to go to school again, I could definitely come out different than what I did before, but I didn't even know what was wrong with me until about 9 years ago. And ADD is definitely a real thing. If people don't realize it's not real, well, then they know nothing about psychology or the brain or anything of that nature. And I just got finished listening to Joe. I just listened to a video where this guy is supposed to be like one of the greatest minds out there, and he just said something that was just utterly stupid. So don't take too much. So I'm not stupid. Like this guy, let's see if I can look at my history here real quick and find what I just watched this morning. Here it is. This guy here. This guy's like a super mathematician.
Skilled. So it seemed to be, okay, you've got different kinds of structures, and it could well be that these pyramidal cells, which have a particular organization of microtubules, are the ones that convolutions in it. But right underneath and at the back, there's a thing called the cerebellum, which looks more like a ball of wool or something. And the cerebellum, I missed a wee argument about this, but it seems to be that it's completely unconscious. And it has comparable number of neurons.
But basically, what this guy's going to try to say that he says, well, maybe I should just let it play and you can hear it for yourself.
Neurons, far more connections between neurons in the cerebrum, and it's what takes control when maybe when you're driving your car and you're thinking about something else and you're not thinking what you're doing.
I mean, here's this guy who's supposed to be an expert on consciousness and saying this stuff to Joe Rogan, and I can just shoot him right out of the sky like nothing. Because I've been working on the same kind of stuff as far as how the brain works, and just to my own simple observations, not being a scientist of any kind. But he just got finished saying that the cerebellum is the part of the brain that kicks in when you're driving down the road and you're not conscious of what you're thinking. Like, let's say you drive past a sign. Let me make sure exactly what he said before I tear him, or I destroy what he's saying, or prove that he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Or something. And the cerebellum, I missed a wee argument about this, but it seems to be that it's completely unconscious. And it has comparable number of neurons, far more connections between neurons in the cerebrum. And it's what takes control when maybe when you're driving your car and you're thinking about something else and you're not thinking what you're doing.
Okay. First of all, let me blow away what this guy just said. He says the cerebellum is what takes control. I think I understand what he's saying. Okay, I see two different parts that I never saw before. He's saying that it's doing the driving. Okay, I think I see what he's saying, which I never saw before until now. The second time I've listened to it. I think what he's saying that it's doing the driving and the seeing. Oh, now I see what he's saying. So maybe I'm wrong. Because he's saying it's doing the driving and the seeing. You see, two things are going on when you're daydreaming. He might be right about this. Because as you're going down the road, who's driving if you're daydreaming about something else? Who's doing the driving? And who's doing the seeing? If you're daydreaming and you see what you're doing is you're daydreaming. And if somebody asks you, sometimes if somebody catches you in a daydream, they say, and you let's say you go by your exit, and somebody asks you and say, what were you thinking? Sometimes you'll go, I don't know. So you just drove by the exit, and you're like, well, what were you thinking? And you're like, well, I don't know. I have no clue. See, that's daydreaming, no different than when you sleep at night. You're using that part of your brain, and when you sleep at night, that's what I didn't see. I was thinking we were using that part of the brain, and I see what he's saying. What he's saying could possibly be true, because when you're daydreaming, after I listened to this, I looked it up. Because when you're daydreaming, when you dream, you use lots of parts of your brain. Sometimes the whole area of the brain's lit up when you're dreaming. So when you're daydreaming, you're probably not quite as deep as you are when you're dreaming, but you're probably using a larger portion of the brain when you're daydreaming. So maybe he's right in the fact that as far as what's actually driving, the part of the brain that's actually driving the car could be the cerebellum. Because you're still seeing as you're going down the road, but you're not conscious. What you're conscious of is what you're daydreaming, but then you're not even conscious of what you're daydreaming because that's your subconscious. And your subconscious is very interesting, which I'm writing books about that kind of stuff. So what you're actually in is your subconscious, but then you can also go into your subconscious consciously, as like what Albert Einstein would do. And that's when you can tap into your subconscious, because anytime you're thinking deeply, you're in that area of the brain that Einstein used, which is kind of like lighting, what they said, you're lighting up the whole brain. Like when you dream at night, you're lighting up the whole brain. So probably Einstein was using all of his brain. It was all lit up, probably. I mean, I'm just summarizing. I don't know for sure. But if you can tap into the subconscious, see, the subconscious is where all the information exists at once. Kind of like on the quantum level, I suppose, when they say, well, where's the electron? The electron's in more than one place at once, right? So consciousness is all of those conscious thoughts that everything you've ever learned your entire life is present, it's there, and somehow that's how you can understand things, because it's a consciousness that takes all that information, the unconscious information and the conscious information, and kind of merges it at a meeting place. And then that meeting place is the present thought that you're having at that moment, right? That moment in time. I don't really want to sit here and try to crack the secrets how this works. I'm just kind of talking out of my butt a little bit at the moment, but okay, I see what he's saying. At first I thought he was trying to say that the cerebellum was responsible for the daydreaming. I thought he's crazy, because the daydreaming lights up the whole brain. He's just saying it's might be responsible for the seeing and the driving as you're actually thinking about something else, is what he's saying, which could be true or might not be true. Okay, I see what he's saying. But anyway, let's go back to this, or not that. But the reason I recorded is because some of the things they were saying here, especially when they were talking about these priests, really got on my nerves. I mean, like you're judging priests? Why judge priests why judge Christianity through religion when you can judge it through someplace like Sid Roth that's done 40 years of interviews? I mean, Sid's done this as just interviews. Just like a reporter, an investigative reporter. That's how he started this 40 years ago. And he's got 40 years of interviews. And I mean, he could interview me and see supernatural experiences. And what's interesting, they all agree, just like the Bible agrees, with tons of stuff, tons of information. Like Muhammad wrote one little book, and then everybody believed that one book, and he said, like, the angel Gabriel talked to him. Now that could be an explanation of that religion when it comes from one person, but the entire Bible ties together from Genesis all the way to Revelations. I mean, I can show you ties and ties and ties and ties from Jesus coming to the prophecy of Jesus coming to saying a virgin would give birth. I mean, from the lamb being slain and in Egypt, to being the blood put on the doorpost, to, I mean, everything ties together. And real Christianity is real. And I mean, if Joe really wants to pursue this, he should have people from Sid Roth on his show. I mean, if he wants to make judgments, because what is a judgment? If you look up the definition of judgment, in especially an older dictionary, I think people are getting dumber. Because in a newer, I have a real old dictionary that was written probably, it's probably about 60 years old. If you look up the definition of wisdom in that one, it says the definition of wisdom says it's the power to judge and make the soundest judgment based on knowledge, experience, and understanding. And that's kind of like what science does, right? Science, you make a judgment by gathering the most information, the most knowledge, and then you finally get a thing called understanding. It's the definition of wisdom is it's the power to judge and make the soundest judgment based on knowledge. That means you have to know what your topic, what you're talking about. Joe Rogan doesn't know anything about Christianity. He's never even got born again, which when you get born again, you get a sensor that's more powerful than the Hadron Collider sensor. I mean, Joe uses drugs as a spiritual sensor. But you can only explore certain realms in that sensor. It's not the same as Christianity. The born again sensor connects you to God, whereas the drug sensor, you don't know what the hell you're connected to. I mean, you have to understand there's 1/3 of demonic forces out there that want to deceive you. And in the drug realm, I think its potential, I mean, it's kind of like the free-for-all. I would think it's like the free-for-all realm where you're kind of opening yourself up. I don't think it's God's, I mean, if God really wanted any Christians to do that, I guarantee you that when Jesus said, "You must drink my blood and eat my flesh," if it was Christianity was about that, then Jesus would be saying, "Well, you need to smoke some pot and take some mushrooms." If he was really about that. But what's interesting, he says you have to drink my blood, and guess what? One of the most things that helped rats extend their life comes from the skin of red grapes. It's called I don't know if I can spell it. There it is. This comes from it's interesting that Jesus says to eat this. It comes from the skin of grapes, and Jesus says, "Well, drink my blood," which is wine. And what is wine? It's a red stuff and guess what it's made of? This stuff right here. I can't even pronounce it. Let me type it in here. Maybe you can pronounce it for me. I've had ADD all my life, and I'm not very good at pronouncing stuff. I'm not dumb. I just I've trouble. I'm not good at language. See if this. Whoops! Hit the wrong button. Well, that didn't work. But glad to see this stuff come down in price. But of course, this stuff, that'd be interesting to study this stuff. See why it does what it does. But well, I need to read this sometime. It's produced by several plants, but the one I'm taking is based on the skin of grapes. Oh, it's blueberries has it too. I didn't know that. It's in peanuts too, really? Wow. Oh, notice how it's produced after it's under attack. That's very interesting. Notice how Jesus was under attack. Interesting. So it's produced when it's under attack by bacteria or fungi. I'm surprised they didn't put viruses in there too. Maybe they forgot. That's not good to see. No benefits from people who already have heart disease. So the mouse studies didn't, that's a shame. So there's no evidence in cancer. It says there's no evidence on all these things, but that's what I was going to take, is 1,000 milligrams a day. I was shooting for 2,000, but anyway, I can read this some other time. But there's plenty of evidence out there. Here's 40 years. This guy's done 40 years of interviews, and plenty of the interviews that he's done, I've had many of the same experiences with these people. Like when I was 14, when God showed up, when I didn't even know who Jesus was, I fell off my bed, and then on these church, when God shows up in a lot of these different meetings and in church, people fall on the ground. Like I just listened to this chick on YouTube, Anna Werner. She just had an experience where a weighty blanket came down on her, and it makes perfect sense to me, because the weighty blanket of God is really the atmosphere of heaven, and it's a different place. You have to understand that we live in a fallen dimension, a fallen place, where worry and fear, it didn't exist in Genesis and the Garden of Eden. They were connected to the kingdom, and in the kingdom there is no fear or worry. Like if you listen to this guy, one of his most recent, it's not here. I mean, it all ties together so clear. Like this guy talks about his experience he has an experience where I'm going blank at the moment. Shouldn't record these videos when I'm a little bit on the tired side.
Welcome to my world, where it's naturally supernatural. Bring you into what I call the manifestation of now. The realm of impossibility is opening to you in a fresh way. Get ready, an explosion of glory is here. Actions activate the miraculous. Absolutely. Every miracle in the Bible was literally activated by the action of somebody who believed. You know, I'm reminded of the woman with the issue of blood in the gospel account. And the Bible says, she said within herself, today I'm going to be made whole. Today I'm going to receive my miracle. And she pressed through the crowd. You know, sometimes that crowd is not people. Sometimes that crowd is fear. Sometimes that crowd is family. Sometimes that crowd is environment. But you got to be willing to press through the crowd, whatever that crowd may be, and lay hold on God's power and purpose for your life. And when people act on the word of God in faith, it releases miracles.
You know what I'm hearing right now? You're saying, stop looking back.
See, you could, someone who can look through this through the wrong eyes could focus on what they see as negative. But once you start having supernatural experiences, you start realizing that basically you start putting the pieces together just like a puzzle. I mean, it takes time to put the puzzle together. But the longer and the puzzles, one thing about puzzles is they always fit together as you put together the pieces. They're by design. They're there. The puzzle's there. And when you start putting together the pieces, it is what it is, because it is there by design. Everything God does is by design. For example, in the King James Version of the Bible, before they even knew what DNA was, the word God showed up in the King James Version of the Bible 4,444 times. And then all of a sudden, you see that Jesus, who's the Word, is 4 letters. Then Jesus, who's the King spelled with 4 letters. It says God, who is love, spelled with 4 letters. The real word of God isn't spelled with G-O-D, it's spelled in Hebrew in 4 letters. Then all of DNA, which is made up of 4 letters. And then John, who was the closest disciple to Jesus, 4 letters. John wrote the 4th gospel. And in the 4th gospel of John, there's all kinds of secrets. Oh my goodness. Especially around John chapter 14. And that's just stuff I by accident bumped into because I kept seeing 4s. After I saw that God was in the Bible 4,444 times, I thought, no, that's not an accident. And the whole Bible is, it's, as you start having supernatural experiences, which are real experiences, and these people have real experiences, and they believe based on real experiences, not drug experiences. Drug experiences, you can't say a drug experience is a real experience, because it's not. It's a consciousness experience, but you can't even say that a drug experience is any more real than a dream. You can't say it. But this is based on real, Christianity is based on real experience. Now Joe Rogan says that he's right about religion. Let me see if I can find the one we were watching. He says in this one that the Catholics started using this drug. Of course they were, because their religion was dead. Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Of course they're using this.
Getting high off of whatever that is.
Oh, no shit. So there's natural gas leaking out to the ground where she was...
You can get those.
Dinosaur poop?
Yeah.
Really could have been it.
Well, they also did a book called The Oracle about the Oracle at Delphi.
The psychedelic is common sage.
Wow. Or close to the basic for all intents and purposes,
Yeah, in the neighborhood of it.
And it's like
members of the genus. Nevertheless, salvia is the Latin name or genus given to all these plants. Yeah, so sage is salvia. So salvia divinorum, this incredibly potent psychedelic, is common sage.
wow. Or close to the basic for all intents and purposes,
Yeah, in the neighborhood of it.
And it's like a mix of acid and weed.
Yeah, look at those guys tripping balls, son! Those guys are walking around with salvia, blowing salvia smoke. That's not a coincidence, man.
So basically, it shows these Catholic preach with salvia. Of course, it's not a coincidence. Their religion's dead. See, Joe Rogan thinks he solved Christianity here. He doesn't know a damn thing about it. And Joe's smart. He just needs to talk to some real Christians. I mean, he really does. He needs to wake the hell up. He's talking to all these people that don't know a damn thing about it. But he's the one being duped here. Faith comes by hearing, but everything comes by hearing, Joe, you silly goose. And Joe's not dumb. Joe's one of the most rounded human beings on the earth on most things, and that's what makes this so sad. That's what makes this so sad, is that he makes these connections, these stupid connections, and he doesn't even understand what he's connected. He thinks the Catholic religion, it's dead as a doornail. Of course they're using this stuff to try to have some sort of spiritual experience, because they're dead. They're not walking anywhere near God through their religion, which is a spiritual DNA by design of Satan. And then they're trying that to have some sort of spiritual experience. And Joe thinks he's cracked how all religion has been manifested. I mean, it's so stupid to listen to him when you're a real Christian. It's just so stupid. But there's millions of people on this site. I mean, if Joe really wants to listen, then interview some real Christians, please. Stop interviewing these stupid people that agree with you. And these people aren't stupid. I'm not saying these people are stupid. It's just you can't. The bottom line, wisdom is the power to judge. And you can only judge something if you investigate it. Now Joe might say, oh, Sid's doing this for the money. No, Sid was doing this because he knew he found the truth. There's a difference. Now, sure, it pays Sid's bills, and rightfully so. And I don't believe any story on here unless it checks. And Sid's pretty careful about who he has on the show. And I don't base any of my belief system based on these things I hear from these people. Now, it backs up the experiences I've already had. Because faith is something that God shows you. And I've never taken a drug in my life. And I don't need drugs. Because once you get born again, you start sensing. And when I was 14, I started sensing God. And God showed up at my house at 14. I was going to look back and look at God when he showed up when I was 14. And God said, you can't look at me, which matches the Bible. I didn't read until years later that God said you can't look at him. If you look at the near-death experience of Ian McCormick actually broke the veil. He died and saw God, and he tried to look in God's face. It was Jesus, because Jesus said if he saw the Father, he saw me. So he sees Jesus. And Jesus, as he's trying to see his face, Jesus moves, shows him a portal into eternity, which Jesus says on the door, and he shows him heaven. And you see a portal into eternity. So I challenge Joe to actually get born again, stop taking drugs, have the balls to get born again, and I mean, there's millions of shows he can watch here. I mean, interview someone from this. Have an open mind, you know. And I tell you what, you be around some of these people, you'll start having some real experiences eventually. If you go down this rabbit hole, and it's a true rabbit hole, it's not a drug rabbit hole. Let me recommend some stuff for Joe to watch. Jennifer Toledo. Watch that story. Watch this one about Jennifer Toledo. I recommend that story. Let's see who else I can recommend. I mean, a lot of these people are good, but you have to have spiritual understanding to kind of know what's going down. You have to have some experience. You're not going to understand this stuff or believe it unless you have some supernatural experience of your own. What I found interesting was I mean, these are all good. A lot of these are really good. I'm just seeing if anybody jumps out at me. I mean, probably this would appeal more to Joe Rogan, someone like Jonathan Cain, which he kind of almost like scientifically proved that every 7 years that this thing called a Shemitah happens on the earth. Joe should read that book. I mean, that just appeals more to the scientific type mind, I suppose. It's kind of like there's a cycle that happens. That even Wall Street started reading his books. It became a New York Times bestseller because they thought, well, there's something here. Something's going on. But I need to read that book to be able to talk too much about it. But no, it doesn't surprise me. All the things I've had happen, it just doesn't surprise me. This video is not very good. I'm sorry. I'm too tired to do it right. This girl right here is excellent to watch. I recommend this one. I mean, they're all good. Like this chick battled for healing, and then finally, after about 12 years, finally started having breakthroughs and healing. Who else can I recommend? I mean, they're all good. It's hard to favor one over another. One guy I really respect is I'll see if I can find him. I should know his name by now. But he cracked a secret that was very interesting to me. I knew what was going on. See, I don't know how people that don't have supernatural experiences and like, let me just tell you about one of my supernatural experiences. I was at church, and everything the minister said for an entire service, it was like he was reading my mind. I mean, I've had that happen. John Kilpatrick's an interesting guy. He had a church. 1 million people went through his church because God was moving in his church. And he cleansed the church, and Henry Groover, oh my goodness, that's a good person to look up. Someone that Henry Groover was with found the Ark of the Covenant, and they actually found Jesus' blood on the Ark. What's that guy's name? They actually found the Ark of the Covenant. It was buried actually right below where Jesus was crucified. And Jesus' blood, they found it on the Ark, which is an amazing thing. And then they sampled the blood. All this was documented, and that the blood showed that there was no father. It only showed that the mother, which the scientists said was impossible. Now, I don't verify that story. It doesn't surprise me. but I can't verify that that's 100% true. I know about 40 years ago I saw a vision of Jesus, and he looked just like I didn't see it till 30 years later, the Shroud of Turin. So I got a clear view of Jesus' face in the vision when I saw him 30 years ago, and I never saw the Shroud of Turin until 35 years later. And when I saw it, I thought, wow, that looks just like the vision I saw of Jesus. And I'm not saying that's the Shroud of Turin's real. I know people tried to say that it wasn't. Catholics won't let anybody test the thing to really prove how old it is. So I'm not saying that that's true, but that's what I saw. I gotta find the specific guy. I mean, they're all good. If you have any knowledge about Christianity, all this stuff is so valuable, so powerful. Senator Kennedy's amazing. See, if people don't have understanding of Christianity, it's hard for me to even explain this stuff. They don't have a foundation. It's not, I don't even know if it's going to make any sense to them. If they don't have a foundation, I've been putting these pieces of the puzzle together for 40 years. So I don't even know where to begin to try to talk to someone like a Joe Rogan. I don't even know where to begin, to be honest. I'm trying to find the specific guy. I should know his name by now. And it's not always the famous people that have great revelation of God. You know, like the Benny Hinns. I'm sure Benny Hinns had, a move of God by faith. But what's interesting about the spiritual gifts is they can operate no matter, if you have faith, they can operate. A spiritual gift can operate. It's not contingent on how good you are. If you believe in it, it'll operate. Like in the Bible, Saul, the king who was trying to murder King David, when they got around the prophets, he started prophesying. So a spiritual gift, it is what it is. It's a gift. It'll operate even when you're in a sick spiritual state. And Joe Rogan doesn't understand stuff like that. It doesn't make any sense to him. Oh, here's the guy. This is a good one. This is one of my favorites, Jeremy Nelson. Very interesting. But he actually has a feather that was left behind by an angel. And when I saw the feather, let's just go to that real quick.
Is there a supernatural dimension? A world beyond the one we know?
With God, there has to be fruit. And that's how we know if it's of God. Well, that night, there was a young lady that was in the meeting who responded because the Lord told me, he said, I want you to pray for the sick. He said, as they go from the roof, I thought to myself, did that just happen? And I mean, he was probably back on campus, and they didn't actually know much about our ministry, and they invited us in as a secretary of the college. I went on a crusade with us down into Africa, and when I showed up, I was shocked, because I just knew by talking to them, they didn't have the Holy Ghost. And so they're very conservative. I thought this is going to be interesting. And so I went back to my room and I prayed. I said, God, I need a breakthrough anointing tonight. And as I was praying, a massive angel came right through the roof. And I mean, he was probably about 8-9 feet tall, very muscular. And I felt this wind that came into the room. And I just knew in my spirit that the angel was the angel of the winds of change. And as this angel went back through the roof, it was like it lasted about 10 seconds. He went back through the roof. I thought to myself, did that just happen? And when I looked down on the ground, I found this.
I've never seen a feather. It looks almost like a corkscrew.
Yeah, so it's, and the Lord spoke to me. He said, the angel of the winds of change is an angel.
See, I have the spiritual gift of understanding which not too many Christians have. And I haven't demonstrated it too much here because I'm tired. Just like Oral Roberts' faith, it didn't work. It didn't work very good when he was tired, and my gift of understanding don't work when I'm tired. I don't know why I'm even recording this video. But see this feather? It's shaped like a corkscrew. Remember I talked about how DNA. Let's just look at DNA real quick. DNA.
Here's a matching video.
What in the world? I said DNA. DNA.
Here's the definition of DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid is self-replicating material which is present in nearly all living organisms as the main constituent of chromosomes. It is the carrier of genetic information.
But notice how this window. See, these guys are clueless. They don't know. Even Sid, that's done 40 years of interviews, is clueless. Why this angel feather looks like DNA. But I knew because I got to give me a book back in 2019. You know, see how this looks, corkscrew feather. And the name of the angel was called the Winds of Change, and they were both clueless. They were both completely clueless why this feather looked like a corkscrew, but I wasn't, because I talked about this book I was going to write and never wrote it. But I have recordings that go all the way back since 2009. What is this, 2020? I was going to write this book, and it was called Spiritual DNA. And I got the God, through the Holy Spirit, gave me the revelation when I was reading the scripture that said, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That's something that King Solomon said, which was one of the most wisest people in the world. And when Jesus came, he said, there's someone more wiser than Solomon. Of course, you know anything about the wise men in the Bible. They knew that Jesus was here, and all of Israel, who was caught up in religion, had no clue. That's why I think it's funny when I see Joe Rogan showing the Catholics, who's totally infiltrated with the DNA of Satan and the religion of that they have to have drugs to know anything, to have any kind of spiritual experience, just like Joe Rogan. Remember, Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Joe's got to have a spiritual experience. Joe's got to play around with drugs. Everybody seeks the spiritual stuff, you know. Even Eve in the garden took Satan's seed, which was his word, and a seed is something that replicates endlessly. And then Satan got them to download the knowledge of good and evil, which replicated another seed in conjunction with Satan's seed. And that's why we're all so screwed up. That's why Jesus says you have to become like a little child again. This means we're so screwed up. We get so screwed up, and even what produces comedians are people that are screwed up. They turn it around. They become a joke. But a lot of comedians, like Robin Williams, you know, commit suicide because the laughter is only a temporary solution for their screwed up mind. People like Carrie Fisher has electric shock therapy, which is the same thing the receptor of marijuana does. It makes you forget. And I guess marijuana not only makes you I don't know much about drugs, but I guess it not only fits in a receptor that makes you forget, it also puts something else there. I guess the other component, the psychedelic component. So it fits two ways, but Carrie Fisher had to get electric shock therapy. And if you know anything about the Holy Spirit, it came in fire and tongues. Because the tongue is the speaking of God's word, which is a seed, and the fire is what burns out the old seed of Satan. And it's a process. It takes time. Just like a baby that develops from a small cell, then slowly starts to grow. I don't claim to have grown much in a Christian. I do have the gift of understanding. But as far as revelation, I'm glad I don't have it, because I don't want to be judged. This guy has revelational. He's met a lot of angels. He sees angels. He even has a feather from an angel. He can snap a piece off his feather and it'll just grow right back. I'd like to see him take this feather and have it analyzed on a scientific thing. I'd like to see that happen on the Joe Rogan show. Let this thing be analyzed. See, it's got to have DNA in it, and that's what I'd like to see. I challenge Joe Rogan to get this piece of this feather and analyze it. Because all things have DNA that are of this earth, so this wasn't of earth. So I'm very confident. I'm confident that we'll have this guy on the show. Joe, step up. Take the blue pill. Grow a set and have a real Christian on your show. I dare you. Have this guy, this Jeremy Nelson, on your show. I mean, I'm not worthy to be on your show because I believe, but there's a difference between believing and doing. I still have lots of things to overcome. I've got, I'm still trying to beat my demons back. I don't, the word has to be born in you. Depending on what your heart is like, the word don't stick in you. And I was in a state of consciousness that nothing sticks in me because of my state of consciousness. I don't want to get too deep on how consciousness works and how you can live in your subconscious and not know it. I don't want to say too many things about that because it's writing books about that kind of stuff. But Joe Rogan's success is when he shifted out of being an introvert into somebody that was more aware. That's when you face your fears. And even anybody that gets stressed in life has to figure out some of these things. Like, let's go to Incubus Drive, for example. The song Drive. Anybody knows this stuff that's an artist or successful. Like in this song here, talks about how you can't let fear drive. I recommend. I don't want to play the video on here, but I recommend listening to that video. And then even a group like Metallica. There's a song called Nothing Else Matters. And see what that is, since I have more understanding than most people, is it's a DNA. When you select only certain DNA of thought to penetrate your mind, for example, let's use ants. Ants don't have a wide range of thinking, but they follow simple programming. And when Metallica sings a song, Nothing Else Matters, what they're really talking about is spiritual mental DNA, spiritual/mental DNA, because it's kind of both the same. Jesus, who's the Word, says that words are either life or death. But when they sing the song "Nothing Else Matters," they've filtered out the garbage in life, and it really has a great deal to do with real Christianity, because this winds of change is really it's really what happened in Genesis. In Genesis, Eve got a hold of the wrong word, which was a doorway, and it shifted them. And drugs is a doorway into another realm. But everybody's seeking spiritual stuff, because our spirit seeks that. But there's a lot of spiritual realms out there that aren't of God, and the drug realm just isn't. It's a way, and I'm sure those Catholic priests were, since they were so spiritually dead, that Joe talks about here, that's what they had to use. And Joe thinks he's cracked the secret of Christianity. But I challenge Joe to stop listening to, start listening to some real Christians. I challenge him, he really wants to explore it. He's got 40 years of supernatural experience of people that's had these experiences, and he can interview these people and try to overthrow them on his show if he wants to. He can have me on the show if he wants to. But I don't claim to overcome much of anything. I'm still struggling as a Christian because I have a sick heart. But my sick heart is what's giving me my revelation. Just like Joe talks about, see, God gives a spiritual gift based on what you need. And my gift was understanding. So he gave me that gift so I can understand how all this stuff works, so I can find my way out. Now, God can supernaturally deliver people. He's, on many occasions, healed people of mental illness, but what good is that if they don't understand the process of how it happened? I'd rather kind of know what's going on. Like doctors, for example, they crack the secrets of cancer or whatever. They're starting to crack all these secrets. They're even trying to crack the secret of aging. I'd rather be in more control of my own thinking, my own destiny, and God doesn't really have a problem with that. He's the giver of understanding. That's what he's all about. He hides his secrets in everything, in nature. There's secrets everywhere. There's so many secrets. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the things God has hidden just in nature. We've cracked a few secrets in science as far as we theorized that black holes could exist, and then all of a sudden we find that they do exist. And Jesus 2,000 years ago said that stars could fall out of the sky. he said that such things were. I mean, how else we now know that a star can fall out of the sky by a thing called a black hole. They've sat there and watched stars fall into black holes. And since we're looking back in time, how do we know that how far advanced these black holes have really gone? How do we know that they all not getting close to us and everything's been swallowed up? We really don't know, because light takes a certain amount of time to get here. So I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but Jesus said something about in the last days the stars are going to fall out of the sky. And I think one of the scientists has already said one of the last things that's going to be in the universe is black holes. That's the last thing to go. Now, I don't know what Jesus exactly meant by the last days. I guess maybe it means exactly what it says in the very last days of humanity. I don't know, and I'm not sure when that is. But this is all temporal. Whether you die, whether you die tomorrow, whether you're having a little jiu-jitsu contest with somebody and your blood pressure goes up and you blow an artery. There's one little artery in your brain and your brain bleeds out and your brain dead. Whether you die now or whether you live to be 90, like Hugh Hefner, you're going to die. I think Hefner lived to 90, didn't he? Let's see how long old Hugh lived. Hugh Hefner.
According to Wikipedia, Hugh Marston Hefner was an American magazine publisher.
I was always amazed how long. I thought, wow, is Hefner still around? And finally time got him. I was like, dang, this guy's living on forever. '91. I mean, I remember, seeing him on Twitter, tweeting all the time, and but I mean, It's amazing how many people die and you don't even, you're like, oh, that person's dead already? It's like I'm the same age as Madonna and Michael Jackson, and Michael's been gone for how long already? I mean, time, it just goes so fast. Michael Jackson.
According to Wikipedia, Michael Joseph Jackson was an American singer, songwriter, and dancer.
Can you believe he's been gone for 11 years? Whew. What's interesting is Michael couldn't master his demons. Just like Carrie Fisher, they got electric shock therapy. She had to be a functional human being, she had to get electric shock therapy. But the DNA, the thoughts in her brain got all tangled up in a bad way. The only way she could function is to get shocked. And then Michael Jackson couldn't sleep at night. The only thing that could help him was a powerful drug called Diprovan. See if I'm still on. I have myself good muted, good. But old Michael couldn't sleep at night, so he had to take the old he had to take a drug called Diprovan, which is what they put you out in surgery to put you to sleep, or if you're in ICU in the hospital and you're on a ventilator and they want to sedate you so you don't fight the ventilator, they might give you some Diprovan. Knocks out breathing, but if you're on a ventilator, it's okay, but it looks just like milk. But anyway, I just challenged Joe to go down this rabbit hole. This stuff's real. It's not drug induced. Saying it's drug induced is just drives me nuts when he says stuff like that. He just has no clue what he's talking about. Has no experience, no understanding. But that's why I'm making these videos. Anyway, I gotta stop. I wasted way too much time today.